Unit 12 Lecture. Your Unit 12 readings begin with a chapter on assessment that outlines informal approaches to assessing children's literacy knowledge. If you are working with an age group or a specific group of children for whom learning to read and write are either age-appropriate or of interest, you will want to be familiar with one or more of these checklists to determine what each child knows and what specifically they find problematic. Such informal assessments completed early in the year will also provide you with a benchmark against which you can measure future progress. Read carefully enough to be able to provide a succinct explanation of what each tool assesses. In these checklists, several small skills are measured, and while I do not expect you to memorize them, I would like you to be able to give at least a few of the skills measured within each checklist. In addition to informal assessment, there are also many formal assessments that can be completed to determine reading and writing skills. I have included an overview to broaden your understanding of the many sub-skills that children master as they become fully literate. The charts that I have included here are some of the more user-friendly ones available, and they can help you to get a sense of the basic literacy skills generally seen in the 3 to 4-year-old and kindergarten to grade 3 age groups. These charts will provide you with a quick framework for considering the children's skills and your objectives for them. Assessing literacy development in 3 and 4-year-old children. Listening comprehension. Listens with increased attention. Listens for different purposes. Understands simple oral directions. Listens to and engages in directions. Listens to and engages in conversation. Listens to tape and responds to the direction on the tapes. Speech production and discrimination. Identifies differences between similar sounding words, for example, tree and three. Produces speech sounds with increased ease and accuracy. Experiments with language. Vocabulary. Shows an increasing in listening and speaking vocabulary. Uses new vocabulary in daily communication. Refines understanding of words. Increases listening vocabulary. Verbal expression. Uses language for a variety of purposes. Uses sentences of increasing length and grammatical complexity. Uses language to express routines. Tells a simple, personal narrative. Asks questions. Begins to retell stories in sequence. Phonological awareness. Begins to identify rhymes. Begins to attend to beginning sounds. Begins to break words into syllables or claps along with each syllable. Begins to create words by substituting one sound for another. Print and book awareness. Understands that reading and writing are ways to obtain information and knowledge and communicate thoughts and ideas. Understands that illustrations carry meaning but cannot be read. Understands that letters are different from numbers. Understands that a book has a title and an author. Understands that print runs from left to right and top to bottom. Begins to understand basic print conventions. For example, letters are grouped to form words. Words are separated by spaces. Letter knowledge and early word recognition. Begins to associate letter names with their shapes. Identifies 10 or more printed letters. Begins to notice beginning letters in familiar words. Begins to make some letter sound matches. Begins to identify some high-frequency words. Motivation to read. Demonstrates an interest in books and reading. Enjoys listening to and discussing books. Requests being read to and rereads the same story. Attempts to read and write. Knowledge of literary forms. Predicts what will happen next in a story. Imitates special language in a book. Asks questions about the information or events in a book. Connects information and events in books to real life. Written expression. Attempts to write messages. Uses letters to represent written language. Attempts to connect the sounds in a word with its letter forms. Begins to dictate words and phrases to an adult who records it on paper. Assessing literacy development in children from kindergarten to grade 3. Reading standards. Number 1. Print, sound, code. Phonemic awareness. The ability to hear the different sound segments at the beginning, middle, and end of words and say or blend separate phonemes to make meaningful utterances. Reading awareness. The ability to figure out words from knowledge of the alphabetic principles and the ability to read words learned by sight. Number 2. Getting the meaning. Accuracy and fluency when reading. Accuracy is the ability to recognize words correctly. Fluency is the ability to read aloud with appropriate intonations and pauses, indicating that students understand the meaning. Self-monitoring and self-correcting strategies, and comprehension. Number 3, reading habits. Reads a lot, discusses books, has a large vocabulary. Writing standards. Number 1, habits, processes, and writing processes. Sharing events, telling stories, narrative writing. Informing others, report or informational writing, getting things done, functional writing. Producing and responding to literature. Number 2, language use and conventions, style and syntax, vocabulary and word choice, spelling, punctuation, capitalization, and other conventions.